Okay, good morning, everyone. We'll call the meeting of the Development Committee of January 17th to order, and roll call, please.
Member Producers.
Here.
Member Chapman.
Here.
Member Gustin. Here. Member Whitlock. Here. Vice Chair Lutton. Here.
Here. We have a quorum. Chairman's remarks. So welcome, everyone. Those who are returning from this committee from the last term, as well as new members. I appreciate Chairman Conroy's designating me as chair again. I enjoy this committee, and hopefully we will continue to have interesting and important discussions regarding the development of DuPage County. We're going to move on to public comment. Public comment is limited to 3 minutes per person. It's the beginning of the meeting. Total shall not exceed 30 minutes. We do have some online public comments, but as has been our history, we will go with the people who are here first. Hopefully we will get through that. And then I think there's just 2 public comments online we should be able to get through. All I would ask is that if you're going to say something which has been said by the person just before you, instead of telling us the same thing again and taking up another 3 minutes, if you can just say, I agree with that person, or I disagree with that person, that will be helpful to get through the 6 or 7 people we have for public comment. We will start with Dr. Joe Sheehan for Cary Farms. Dr. Joe, are you here? There he is.
I'll just put this here. So yesterday I would have spoke at a special hearing with West Chicago just to give the development committee an update on that. They voted to oppose my project, which will require a supermajority vote at the board, the county board meeting, which is important for the members to know so that they have full information. And I'm assuming that Mary will speak about that as well. So just to give you a little bit of quick background, dear Chairman and Development Committee members, my name is Dr. Joe Sheehan. I'm the owner and operator of a 22-acre hemp and honey farm in unincorporated Winfield. We have been in operation since 2019. I've been informed recently that it's possible that my farm may become West Chicago in the future. I have a rezoning project before you for a 4,000 square foot retail development at the front of my property at 28 West 461 Roosevelt Road. It is hoped that this development could be a retail location, brick and mortar, to sell our farm products seed to sale. We'll be partnering with a social equity license holder in this pursuit. This project is LEED certified. The project scheduled to open summer 2023 would bring approximately $500,000 in annual sales tax revenue to West Chicago and the county, and that's conservative measures. This retail development would also likely spark significant further development along this commercial corridor of Roosevelt Road towards West Chicago. I hope you will consider partnering with me on this project and working with me to develop the property my family has lived on for 35 years. Together, we can achieve amazing things for this area and increase sales tax revenue in the area. If opposed today, it might send a signal that the county and the area is closed to this type of development or any of these future developments. Nevertheless, my hemp is state licensed and I plan to continue to cultivate. In fact, going forward, this property is now tax assessed as agricultural. We hope to offset that loss in tax with new and significant sales tax gains. Instead of losing teacher salaries at local schools, we can increase that budget. If at any time anyone would like to contact me about my project or visit my hemp and honey farm, they can call me. My number is 630-890-8949. I'll be available to give a tour of the house, the greenhouse, and our bee yard anytime. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sheehan. I don't know if I can read this. Is it Leo for BFW? You can state your last.
Enkala, P as in Paul, E-N-K-A-L-A. I'm the commander of the Wheaton VFW, and we have a case in front of you, I guess, today for zoning issues. And we are looking to get student parking from Wheaton North parking on our property, which has been going on for several years now, since Wheaton Bowl actually closed, as well as some RVs and trailers. There was a few things brought up at the ZBA last that I just wanted to clarify. Was the post is actually owned by the veteran members who are members of that post, as well as the auxiliary. Everybody who has a trailer there is either a post member or auxiliary member. And technically we are the owners of that property. There was a comment that there will be an abundance amount of traffic now going down Papworth because of our activities. The students that park on our property are going to go to Wheaton North schools. So they're driving either way. The only difference is we're giving them a parking lot to park in rather than trying to find a place to park on the road. If you're familiar with Wheaton North, there's no parking around there. And we started doing this after they approached us, and we had a mutual agreement when Wheaton Bowl closed to give them this parking. We do charge for them the same price as Wheaton North charges the students. There was a comment that, you know, we're supposed to be a not-for-profit or operate on donations. That's true, but we are a business, and without making money, we can't continue to do function post or continue to do what we do within the community with the scouts or assisted living centers that we go to and visit, or the schools we go to. We are all over the place doing different things. If the post closes, the post closes, but we do these things to generate funds for us, as well as it does help the students, the community around us. We've been there since 1931. At one point, we owned 10 acres right there on Papworth in Geneva. We're down to the 4 acres now, and it's been sold off to developers over the years. There was a comment that we've just started these activities. You can pull up Google Earth and you're going to see stuff from 1994 and even earlier, where there was tractor trailers parked on our gravel road, trailers parked in our parking lot. We have been doing this for a long time. There was a comment that we may have outlived our grandfathering. We've been there since 1931. We may have outlived something, but the grandfathering shouldn't be what we've outlived. We've been here in this community and a staple in the community for a really long time. We'd like to continue to be there, but without generating funds, we're not going to get $6,000 or $7,000 a month in donations to operate. And these are ways that we can generate funds at the time we can generate them and save them to sustain life throughout the rest of the year.
3 minutes has elapsed. Please complete your comment.
Thank you for your time. I just hope you in our favor. Thank you.
Mike Roth.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee and members of the county board. My name is Michael Roth. I am the attorney for the petitioner in the Berman-Lapatina matter, which is commonly referred to also as a Bensonville matter on Route 83. We had hearings before the Zoning Board of Appeals. The Zoning Board of Appeals, and with the help of staff, wrote a very thorough report. The findings by the ZBA were unanimous. Very strong report, very strong findings that all of your governing standards were satisfied by the evidence. The only real controversy, I suppose, now is that the Village of Bensonville continues in its efforts to try to frustrate development of this property. But again, I would just ask that you do defer to the Zoning Board of Appeals. You do honor the standards in your ordinances, which have all been met for all the relief that's being requested. I would ask you, if you haven't already, to read the transcripts, because I think that you can tell from the transcripts based on the testimony that was given a couple of things. One is that the village's Bensonville's objections are not well taken. The Village of Bensonville has frustrated the development of this property every step of the way. This is the 4th time that the village has tried to frustrate the development of this property. The 4th Avenue Gospel Church acquired this property 10 years ago, and the village wouldn't let them expand the church. The village wouldn't let them develop it as commercial. The village wouldn't let them develop it as industrial. The village wouldn't let them develop it as multifamily residential. And now the village is trying to exercise its statutory powers to frustrate even a development that will generate very, very little traffic, very little activity there. It's perfect. IDOT has signed off on access to the site. This land is encumbered. It's a difficult site to develop. There's wetlands there, there's floodplain there, and it's really a hard site to develop. And that's really why this property is set undeveloped now for 10 years. It's time that this owner be allowed to develop this property, and this is a good development. The village's objection is the comprehensive plan is not satisfied. Everyone here knows that the western access has been a game changer, and that the village of Bensonville, the village of Wooddale, the village of Elk Grove Village, it's a game changer as to what the comprehensive plans now call for and what the proper uses are. This whole area is changing in its nature. One of the things that the village Bensonville's planning director did testify is that it has no information of any effort to ever develop this property, and it has no information of any effort to develop anything along the
3
west
minutes
side of
has
Route
elapsed. Please
83
conclude your
as
comment.
residential property. So I hope that you'll support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Vicky Wire.
I'm Vicki Wire. I'm here on behalf of the Westwind Homeowners Association Board of Directors. We're a voluntary organization of about 700 independent homeowners located in unincorporated Winfield Township in Warrenville, West Chicago, Wheaton, and Winfield. Some of our member residents have brought to us their concerns about rezoning of the current residential to proposed business B2 for the development of the Cary Farms cannabis operation on Roosevelt Road. The concerns include the diminished value of neighboring homes while compromising resident safety due to the number of buildings, their size, and the intended on-site cultivation and consumption venues proposed for the property. The current site plan does not include a dedicated center turn lane on Roosevelt Road, which we believe will increase the risk of severe life-threatening accidents and invite illegal U-turns and turnarounds. And the potential for drivers intoxicated by cannabis entering and exiting the Cary Farms complex is also a very real thing that should be considered when determining your recommendation. Some unknowns of the rezoning petition are the type and the size of the signage, the light, the odor, the skunk-like smell odor, and the noise pollution impacts to adjoining residential properties. The possible displacement of stormwater to surrounding residents post-construction, the site security. There are empty commercial buildings and land that currently exists on Roosevelt Road that might be a better and more suitable location for this business. Additional concerns are that the project will otherwise impair the public health, safety, comfort, morals, or general welfare of the inhabitants of DuPage County and create a nuisance. A recent smoke vape shop in Lombard had a robbery that resulted in the death of one man and a police officer being shot. In Kane County, an 18-year-old Plato Township man was high on marijuana and speeding when he plowed into the rear of a stopped school bus on Halloween, killing two siblings who were riding with him and severely injuring a third passenger. Courier Elementary School on Gary's Mill Road is a short distance away from the proposed complex. Cary Farms traffic will not be limited to Roosevelt Road, thereby increasing vehicular traffic and negatively impacting the nearby residential and already heavily used side roads of Gary's Mill and Purnell Roads. In your vote, please consider these concerns and take into account the denial of the Cary Farms rezoning petition by the DuPage County Zoning Board of Appeals on 1/12/23. Respectfully submitted by the Westwind Board of Directors. Thank you.
Thank you. Mary Dixon, representing the city of West Chicago.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the Development Committee. My name is Mary Dixon. I represent the city of West Chicago As Dr. Sheehan indicated in his comments, the city of West Chicago unanimously adopted a resolution last night in which it opposes the rezoning of the Cary Farms property from unincorporated R zoning to B2 zoning. The city of West Chicago didn't take this action lightly. It does so in support of an annexation agreement that it signed with the former owner of the Cary Farms property, as well as with owners of surrounding properties. That commitment was reached in 2005 to hold all these properties as residential properties upon annexation to the city of West Chicago. While the annexation agreement has some years behind it, we expect this year in 2023 for all the final measures to come into place so that that property will be annexed to the city of West Chicago. In annexing the property to the city of West Chicago, we have a commitment to have that property zoned residential, and the city intends to abide by that commitment with the owners upon the annexation. The Zoning Board of Appeals, which held a hearing on this and heard all of a very good presentation by Dr. Sheehan and his attorney, and heard the objection of the city of West Chicago, voted unanimously 7-0 to deny the request for the rezoning, principally finding that the existing use of the area surrounding the zoning is residential. The comprehensive plan of the county supports residential, and future uses appear to be residential, at least if you look to the most recent county board action, which was to approve the Trillium Farms development, which is one of the most recent residential activities that was approved in the immediate area. And of course, in support of the city of West Chicago's annexation agreement, for which this property will be zoned residential. We ask that you support the Zoning Board of Appeals and deny the request for rezoning to business. Thank you.
Thank you. Steve Johnstone.
Mr. Chairman and committee members, my name is Steve Johnstone. I'm a congregation member with 4th Avenue Gospel Building. We currently own the church building on Route 83 that, as was mentioned, we purchased 10 years ago. Bentonville was very supportive in this. We approached them before we purchased the property, and they gave us a lot of support, gave us the nod to go ahead. There's many documentations, long letter of their support, including saying there was no wetland on the property, which we're misled in. So this has been a very, very long path for us. We spent hundreds of thousands of dollars in engineering work, and Bentonville gave us their input. Their own in-village engineer gave us input in how to accomplish tying into their sewer and water system. And after we proceeded with all the engineering work for that, they denied it. And this has been a very long, tedious process for this congregation. A very small congregation of elderly persons. And they led us to believe, in fact, the village administrator told me face to face, well, a gas station would be a good development for this property. We pursued that, spent a lot of time, money on that, then they denied that. So we're at the point where we're feeling very frustrated. We don't know what they're trying to accomplish other than trying to devalue the property for their own gains and means is our suspicion. And we really need the board's help to get this approval so we can sell this property and move on with our lives. So thank everyone very much for their support.
Thank you. Curtis Hosgay from the village of Bensonville.
Hosgay, thank you. Hello, good morning. I'm the Director of Community and Economic Development in the Village of Bensonville. Here to speak on the unincorporated Bensonville property on Route 83. The village filed a resolution protesting this case on October 25th, 2022. I believe you also received protests or objections from the city of Wooddale, Benton High School District 100 of the Bensonville Park District. So it's not just Bensonville that's opposed to this project. Simply put, we believe the ZBA was negligent in its decision, not properly considering the facts of this case. This is a classic case of spot zoning. The property is surrounded on all sides by residential and institutional uses like Park District, School District, and Ports District property. The nearest commercially zoned lot on Route 83 is over 3,000 feet away, but that's technically on Irving Park Road as Route 83 bypasses it. The next one north would be over 1.3 miles away at Foster Avenue. Everything that's developing as part of Western O'Hare access is north of Foster Avenue, not this far south in the residential district. Maybe the most egregious fact that was left out of the decision-making by the ZBA is that this property is called out in multiple planning documents as being residential. The Village of Bensonville's comprehensive plan calls this property a single-family residential, but more importantly, the county's own recently approved Route 83 corridor plan calls this parcel specifically as residential. This plan was only just adopted in November of 2021. I would guess this is one of your most recently approved plans. The property is literally the only unincorporated Bensville property discussed in the plan and even includes a sample layout for residential. One of the guiding standards of zoning relief is that whether the change is in conflict with the county's planning documents. This decision flies in the face of the public who met multiple times over a year of public meetings and discussions with the future of this area. To speak on the ZBA process quickly, we keep getting told no new information will be accepted, but we were never really given a chance to make our argument. We were only able to submit the objection and then provide our 3-minute public comment. The petitioner presented for over an hour and then was able to cross-examine our planner who was in attendance at that meeting, which is highly unusual and I don't think is even allowed for in your ZBA process. We submitted a rebuttal letter to the ZBA after the meeting, but there's no indication that that letter was ever considered. This recommended zoning change and the associated conditional use and variances do not meet the standards of the county zoning relief, which should be a high bar to meet, specifically when considering a zoning change. We respectfully ask that you overturn the ZBA's decision in this case. Thank you.
Thank you. Alice Cush.
Time and consideration. I approve what the Westwind people have said to you, and so I listened to the last couple meetings with the zoning people, and it seems like one of the compelling issues is how much of the area is already residential. And you look at the maps and you see there are 600 housing units right in that area. In addition to the fact that there are empty businesses up and down the street. But I want to put a face on the people who live there. We bought that lot in 1982. I've been there 40 years. I've seen, we haven't had much turnover. And the one thing about that area is the people who move there, while they're all different, they come there because they like the natural area. They love the trees, the space, the wild animals. An example of that is we don't have a homeowners association. But in 2009, when there was a threat from gypsy moths and the Illinois Department of Agriculture deleted DuPage County from their plan to spray, the village of Winfield had a spraying plan, Cantigny had a spraying plan, the Forest Preserve had a spraying plan. We found out about this in the middle of April, and if we wanted to get in on the spraying, we had to get everything together in 2 weeks. We had to tell the FAA by April 30th, and we did. No homeowners, all independent people, didn't necessarily know each other, had to explain the risk, the safety of the chemicals being sprayed. We did it. We made a difference in the gypsy moth population, and we did it again in 2010. And that's the residential nature that we have there. And just one last little story. We like the animals. My neighbor next door has a nice flower raised bed or something, and her beautiful plantings were disappearing. And the landscaper told her the voles. If you're not familiar with voles, they're like a little mouse-like creature that apparently loves flowers. We're eating her plants. And she came one morning with her cup of coffee to look out at her planter, and there was a little red fox bouncing around, eating the voles. Who knew foxes love voles? But it was a wonderful solution. When that property, before it became a subdivision, it was the old Cornell farm. The McCormicks and the Cornells did fox hunting out there. Well, Cornells are gone, the horses are gone, but the foxes remain. It's a beautiful environment to raise families. And the Cary Farms land is like that. If that gets cleared, you can't recreate 200-year-old trees with a sapling in a bush. That is an environment that is a treasure to the people of DuPage County. There are other places where he can conduct his business. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes the people who are here to publicly comment. We have 3 that have been submitted electronically. I'll read them quickly. Don Kirschenberg from the Friends of the Great Western Trail, providing opposition to the parking of hazardous waste trucks. The large hazardous waste truck parking facility has been proposed to be built at the current site of Center Ice at 1 and 450 Highland Avenue in Glen Ellen. The location is just a few hundred feet from the Great Western Trail and just across the street from schools, church, and hundreds of homes. We have many questions about Silvercombe hazardous waste truck petition. What are the hazardous wastes? Why are they hazardous? What operating hours and days of the week are being considered? Will the trucks be cleaned? Will waste be stored? Will government agencies regulate? Will trucks containing waste be parked there? How many trucks will be allowed at the site? With the predominant winds from the west, what provisions will be made to protect the school children? Same question for users of GWT and homeowners immediately to the south when the wind is from the north. This, of course, is an objection to something not on the agenda today. From David and Colette Cluda, testimony regarding a proposed change for a cannabis business. We've lived on the western edge of the woods of Cantigny subdivision for over 34 years. During this time, we've enjoyed the serenity of the area and the freshness of the air. We are concerned that the proposed zoning change from R2 to B2 would spoil those things. According to the DuPage County Board's own directive, adult use cannabis establishments cannot be located in residential neighborhoods. The property in question is almost totally surrounded by residential areas. Because of this, if approved, it would set a dangerous precedent for having other cannabis establishments in other residential neighborhoods in DuPage County. Therefore, for these reasons, we are strongly opposed to the proposed change in zoning. Rose Quincy, providing testimony opposing Cary Farms. My husband and I oppose the requested rezoning change of current residential to business for the development of Cary Farms. Joe Sheehan's presentation to the Zoning Board of Appeals on 1/12/23 indicated the addition of EV charging stations, hemp farming, bee farming, and a wedding venue is possible alternate uses for this site, as well as a cannabis dispensary and cultivation facility. Very concerning is the wide-ranging and clearly undefined nature of intended uses. In particular, likely on-site consumption areas are most worrisome, as currently designated outdoor patios and deck are shown on their site plan. A recent smoke vape shop robbery in Lombard resulted in the death of one man and a police officer being shot. More importantly, per comments made by attorney Mark Dixon, the petitioner seems to be disregarding the existing 2005 pre-annexation agreement that Dr. Sheehan's family entered into with West Chicago. It cannot be denied that this project, heavily nested in both new and established residential properties, will diminish the value of neighboring homes while compromising residents' peace and security due to the number of buildings, their size, and their proposed uses. Additionally, the lack of IDOT's approval for a dedicated center turn lane on Roosevelt Road will increase the risk of severe life-threatening accidents. Much of Route 83 is very dark and without streetlights, including Dr. Sheehan's property. The potential for impaired drivers entering and exiting the Cary Farms complex is very real and must be considered when determining your recommendation. Recently, a speeding 18-year-old man in Kane County was high on marijuana when he drove into the rear of a stopped school bus, resulting in the deaths of his two siblings and severely injuring a third passenger. Courier Elementary School on Gary Mill Road is located a short distance away from the proposed complex. Cary Farms traffic will not be limited to Roosevelt Road, thereby increasing traffic and negatively impacting the residential and heavily used side streets of Gary's Mill and Purnell Roads. In 2023, speeding and cut-through traffic on these roads remain ongoing unresolved problems, was previously brought to the attention of the ZBA, the Development Committee, and the County Board during the Trillion Farms approval process starting in 2019. We also feel this project will otherwise impair the public health, safety, comfort, morals, and general welfare of the inhabitants of DuPage County and create a nuisance. It goes on, but we're going to continue to go on, but I think you get the gist of that public comment. That concludes the public comment, both in person and electronically. Thank you all for being here and publicly commenting both ways. We'll move on to approval of the minutes. I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes of January 3rd, 2023. There's a motion, a second. Are there any additions, corrections, or deletions? Hearing none, seeing none. All those in favor? Any opposed? The minutes are approved. Moving on to budget transfers. I'll entertain a motion to approve the budget transfers to balance budget lines to accommodate fiscal year-end adjustments. There's a motion and a second. Any concern, comments, questions? Hearing none, seeing none. All those in favor? Any opposed? The motion carries. Moving on to regulatory services. As you know, or if you're new, we entertain all of our motions in the affirmative. So I'll entertain a motion to approve DCO 7-23 ordinance zoning 2249, the Wheaton VFW. This is a zoning board of appeals recommendation to approve a conditional use to allow VFW parking lot and gravel drive to be used for offset parking, and a conditional use to allow host-owned operated trailers and RVs to be stored on the parking lot to allow for open storage in RVs and trailers. There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Yes, Member Ozai.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My concern, and I've heard from numerous constituents about this issue, is the idea of actually being in residence in these trailers versus parking the trailers or storing the trailers. And I just want to make a statement for the record that it is not, this is not an appropriate use to have people actually staying even for several nights, what have you, and that has been the objection of the neighbors. So I would just like to make that statement and hope that the VFW would definitely make sure that it is simply a storage facility and not impacting the neighbors. Thank you.
Paul, can you enlighten us on whether or not that was or one of the conditions?
Yes, the zoning board of appeals in approving this put several conditions on the zoning relief. One of them was that there be no activity in the recreational vehicles, no sleeping, no recreational activities. They're just there for storage only. So that's a condition of the zoning relief.
Yes, and I did see that. Thank you. But I just wanted to make a statement about it.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, comments? Yes, Member Rutledge.
Thank you, Chair. How many trailers are we talking about on there?
6,
Okay,
no more than 6.
Anyone else? Okay, there's a motion and a second to approve the ordinance. Roll call, please.
Member Guston. Member Chaplin.
Aye.
Member Ozog. Member Rutledge. Aye. Chair Tornatori.
Aye. And the motion carries. Moving on to item B, I will entertain a motion to approve DCO 8-23 ordinance zoning 2256.
Second.
Berman Lapatina Enterprises LLC. This is a zoning board of appeals recommendation to approve a rezoning from R4 to B1 to allow a climate control self-storage facility. 2, a conditional use for climate control self-storage facility. 3, variation to reduce the floor area ratio from 0.25 to 0.55. 4, variation to reduce the front yard setback from 40 feet to approximately 20 feet to allow parking in the front setback. 5, a variation to reduce the south interior side setback from 40 feet to approximately 37.6 inches. And 6, a variance to reduce the front yard landscaping setback from 20 feet to 10 feet to allow 10 parking places. There's a motion and a second. Questions, comments? Okay, this is the issue in Bensonville, which has been objected to by Bensonville. It was approved by the ZBA 7-0. I see and hear no questions or comments. God bless you. Hearing none, roll call, please.
Member Guston. Member Ozog. Member Krajewski. Member Chaplin.
Aye.
Member Rutledge.
Aye.
Chair Tornatori.
No. And the motion carries, and this will require a supermajority at county board, correct, Paul? Moving on to item C, I will entertain a motion to approve DCO 9-23 ordinance zoning 2259 Cary Farms.
So moved.
The zoning board of appeals recommendation was to deny a rezoning from R2 single family residential to B2 general business. This was denied at the ZBA by a vote of 7-0. However, again, the motion is in the affirmative. We've seen that West Chicago has objected on this matter as well. Motion in a second. Questions, comments? Member Rutledge.
Thank you, Chair. Actually, I'm going to back up just a minute. You said that item B on our agenda would require a supermajority at the county, but CBA approved it 7-0. Thank you. Thank you. We were
Answer your
confused
question.
about that.
We're good? Okay, we're good.
I'd love to
any-
hear a little more from Paul about the consequences of the West Chicago annexation agreement and how that binds us.
Are we talking about B or C now?
I'm sorry.
Okay, Paul, if you want to bring us up to speed, and then we'll take some questions.
There's a pre-annexation agreement on this property. We have vetted this with our county state's attorney's office to determine if the pre-annexation agreement forecloses on the zoning board of appeals conducting a public hearing. The answer to that is no. The zoning board of appeals and this board, along with the county board, can proceed with the process irrespective of the pre-annexation agreement. The pre-annexation agreement does not, once again, foreclose on any action by the county board. The county board members and the zoning board of appeals can use the information in the pre-annexation agreement to determine what, if any, significance the ER zoning in West Chicago, if this property were to be in West Chicago as part of their long range plans, has on comprehensive plans for the area. So the pre-annexation agreement doesn't foreclose on you proceeding, but you can use it as evidence for or against moving forward with the rezoning of the property.
Member Krajewski. And then we'll do.
Thank you, Paul. This seems to be similar to B, with the same factors that we're looking at for determination.
Yeah, correct. The only thing that we are looking at relative to this case versus the Bensonville case is the Bensonville case had a rezoning and a conditional use. This is a straight rezoning. So the factors before the zoning board of appeals are what are called the LaSalle factors. And that's
Same ones in the last case,
correct.
which, you know, I was looking through and having a hard time maybe coming up with the same conclusion as EBA did, but do you have that map we put up there for page 104 in our packet? You know, it's a map that shows the area.
When is it possible to pull up page 7? No. Of the agenda item, yes.
Page 104, my packet,
Yeah.
page 7, yeah.
It's page 7 on this particular zoning case. And on that, we show the county's GIS map for the area.
Because
And
when
what-
I'm looking at that, and I know, I think even one of the, maybe it was the attorney for the village, the Torilla Farms, I mean, you know, when I'm looking at that map, I mean, they sold the back half off of Roosevelt for that development. That's what we approved is 2019. But the property that's on Roosevelt is B2 right now.
That's correct. What Mr. Krajewski is referring to is that there was a property out there known as Planter's Pallet. It was an agricultural use. It was exempt from local zoning regulations and building and stormwater regulations. The front half of the Planter's Pallet was a 5-acre tract of land along Roosevelt Road. The rear portion of the Planter's Pallet, which is where all the growing occurred, was sold off to Pulte Homes, and that's now the Trillium Farms 84-unit single-family residential development. Planter's Pallet retained the front 5 acres of the property, which is still zoned B2 general commercial. And it's completely disassociated with the Trillium Farms and Pulte development. They're mutually exclusive of one another.
So they, I mean, they kept everything on Roosevelt and all the way, I assume that's west going that way. And even the far west end is pretty deep as far as how far back off Roosevelt is deep too. And then I think farther down, well, across the street, if Blue that's on there. Was it on the map? I'm not sure that's the map.
If you could pull up page 7, Wendy, it's the one that has the colored scheme. Pardon me?
It's not the color scheme.
No.
The next one
You could
after
scroll
that.
through, yeah. Well, the one that, if you could scroll through there, there we are, right? This is the Bensonville site.
104, but it's page 7.
Yeah, this would be the 059 case.
But that blue shaded across the street.
So, yeah, we'll pull that up real quick, but essentially what Mr. Krajewski is talking about is immediately in front of the property, there's a sliver of land that is owned by the Sheehan family that's zoned B2. To the west, owned by the Sheehan family, which is also zoned, portion of it zoned B2. Further to the west is a single family residential property that is zoned B2, but they have a single family home on the property. Further to the west of that is zoned B2, and there is a dumpster facility on that property. Further to the west at the intersection of Gary's Mill Road and Route 38, there's a property zoned to B2, and that is a social service facility. And then further to the west of that on Gary's Mill Road, zoned B2, and that is a public storage facility. Across the street on Roosevelt Road that Mr. Krajewski is referring to is a piece of property that is zoned office, and that's a public storage facility, more the conventional roll-up public storage facility. And then coming east on the north side of Roosevelt Road, closer to the property, there's a property zoned to B2, And that is that's sort of like an Amazon distribution, not a distribution facility, but a courier facility. Here we have it up here.
Yeah, so all that red is B2 on Roosevelt. And then I think to the right of there is Cary Farms, which in you answered the question, I didn't ask it yet, but there is a little bit of red on that subject property, which is B2, right?
Well, not on the subject property, but just the way the subject property is situated, it's 5 acres of land. And there's a little cutout on the east side of that red area that is actually the subject property. That would be where people would gain access to the property. In front of the property, but technically not part of this property, is the B2 sliver. It's owned by the Sheehan family, but it's on a separate 5-acre tract of land that the Sheehans own.
So that's why I'm just saying it's more B2 up there. It's on Roosevelt.
Correct.
It's that little strip on Roosevelt. And then it's all the way to the left. Is that multifamily way down there?
Yes, at the end of the page, if you're sort of going on Roosevelt Road, and then you sort of veer northwest a little bit, that is multifamily. Immediately adjacent to the left to the blue area, that's multifamily.
And then Trillo Farms, which is way directly, I guess, south of or below that red area. That's what was sold off and developed into single family homes with the preference that we did in 2019.
That's correct. That's the Trillion Farms 84 unit single family.
I mean, for me, I'm looking all along Roosevelt Road, and if I'm looking at trends, and I know that, they say general area, I guess it's defined general area, but for me, everything on Roosevelt's B2. Similar to the case before, I just don't understand how, I read what this DBA did, it seems to me that the stuff presented here, in front of the area, B2. So, all right, thank you. That's very helpful.
Chip.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair. So just going back to the annexation agreement, I just want to make sure I understand it. We're not bound legally to honor that annexation agreement. We don't, it's not, the county really doesn't have anything to do with that annexation agreement.
No, that's the contract between the Village of West Chicago and the property owner.
Right. And it was signed in 2005 or 6, I believe. So it's been out there 18 years, something like that. And nothing's, happened. So we can't, I don't know how, maybe they'll be annexed soon. I don't know, but it's been a long time. So, okay. So I just wanted clarification on that annexation agreement. Okay. Thank you.
Member Ozai.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Trillion Farms, just to refresh my memory, there is no access from Roosevelt Road.
That's correct. All access is off of Purnell Road. No access and no stub for access to get
Because that
through.
was discussed, if I recall.
Yes, to get through other properties to get to Roosevelt Road. The only way you can get on and off that property is from Purnell Road to the west.
Yeah, I remember that discussion. Okay, thank you very much.
Member Rutledge.
Thank you, Chairman. So I don't know how this falls in, but I did have a conversation with the mayor of West Chicago about this. And he suggested to me that they may have pulled their letter of objection if Mr. Sheehan had promised not to put a dispensary on that property. So I guess that's my question. It almost feels like people would be okay with this zoning change, but it's the dispensary that is the problem with the zoning change. So I guess I want a little explanation from you, cart versus horse, or how that plays out in order to get that zoning variation. Do they have to say what's happening? And also, has there been any movement at all from a permitting perspective on this project?
So this is a straight rezoning, and it was made clear at the Zoning Board of Appeals public hearing that what the Zoning Board of Appeals was to look at were the LaSalle factors. Does it make sense for this property to be zoned residential or non-residential, in this case B2? The fact that the petitioner does have a proposed development, while perhaps valuable to the outside public, that's not what was before the Zoning Board of Appeals. They had to look at whether or not it makes sense to rezone this property. The objection that came in from the city of West Chicago also dealt with the LaSalle factors and how In the city of West Chicago's opinion, this property doesn't, and the rezoning of this property doesn't meet the LaSalle factors, but that is the only thing before the board. If this property were to be rezoned to a B2 zoning district, then any legal use in the B2 zoning district would be permitted on this property.
Member Guston.
Thank you, Chairman. And can you lightly touch upon what B2 uses would be allowed?
So we have two commercial types of zoning districts. We have B1 and B2. B1 is limited commercial and B2 is general commercial. Essentially, the types of uses that are allowed in B2 are similar to B1, which are service uses, retail type uses. The difference between B1 and B2 is that in B2, you're allowed to have activities outside in the open, whereas in B1, everything has to be inside an enclosed building. So the type of uses you would see would be typical retail uses, grocery stores, retail stores. In the B2, which are not allowed in the B1, you would be able to have contractors' facilities. We see a lot of B2 zoning districts that have electrical, plumbing, painting contractors where they can store their commercial vehicles and equipment outside in the open. And that's really the big difference in terms of the different types of commercial in the county. Ability to store and have some activity outside in the open versus in the B1 having everything inside an enclosed building.
In addition, I know we as a county have been looking into affordable housing. Good land planning typically has single family home and then buffered by multi-unit. So let's say condos or townhouses. And because we have such a shortage of affordable housing in DuPage County, you know, making these zoning changes can sometimes be a challenge because once you put one thing in, now you've eliminated an opportunity for something else. So I want to thank you for the definitions and the clarifications on it. Thank you, Chairman.
Member Rosa.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It seems to me that what we're looking at is an interpretation of how the land is actually used on this southern strip. And what you're describing is a series of B2 properties along this area of Roosevelt Road. B1 or B2?
B2, essentially
B2, okay.
Yeah, at the convergence of Gary's Mill and Roosevelt Road, all of the properties in those four corners are zoned B2 and office. We don't have any B1 in this area. They're all zoned B2 or office.
And including even some of the Sheehan property is B2. The small sliver you're talking about.
Some of the Sheehan zone, approximately 22 acres of land. They've divided that acreage up into 4 5-acre plus parcels of land. The subject property that we are looking at for rezoning does not have any B2 zone on it, but there is a sliver of land for the adjacent Sheehan-owned 5 acres.
Is that contiguous?
That is contiguous.
It is contiguous on Roosevelt Road.
And touches Roosevelt Road and actually touches a part of the subject property. It's about 150 feet of land. It's a sliver that is zoned B2 that is part of the adjacent Sheehan-owned property to the west.
Okay. And also in terms of West Chicago's jurisdiction, just to be clarified, until they are contiguous and the annexation can occur, West Chicago does not have any jurisdiction over this. This is a county issue.
It's a county issue statutorily. You've heard that because the city is within 1.5 miles of this property, on a rezoning, if the city objects formally, which they have, and records that objection with the county recorder's office, which I'm advised they will do today, that automatically by law requires a supermajority vote for the county board to approve this. Other than that, that's the only technical ability West Chicago has to.
So exactly the same as the Bensonville issue that we
Exactly.
just dealt with.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. And Paul, just to be, did Winfield also object to this?
Winfield is objected, but not formally.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Member Krajewski.
Just the last thing, I mean, I think those sound factors are not here. Again, it's a simple, straightforward, we should be looking just at those sound factors, whether it's rezone from residential. It's the only thing that should be looking at. Based on what I saw, that's stuff. CBA, they met them just like 7B above. All right, thanks.
Anyone else? Member Guston.
Point of clarification from member Krajewski. So what you're saying is ZBA was focused on one aspect of this case, which, and because of this being a case that is predominantly that factor, really, we should
No, what I'm saying. is
Agree
we,
with
not
that?
ZBA, I'm saying that we as a board, our decision is just looking at going from a R to the B2. That's the only thing we should be looking at. It doesn't matter what uses are gonna be or whatever, they have to conform to whatever two is just all set. But those are the only things. And the factor is whether we should allow the rezone or not.
And
That's what's before the ZBA.
Right, I
and
mean,
that's
there's a
what's
lot of
before-
stuff that we
So-
get, not only
Yeah.
public comment, we can't listen to public comment, we gotta go by what's in the transcripts and tell it ZBA, but even some of the stuff at ZBA, a lot of that stuff is outside of what we're looking at. A lot of comments that are made, a lot of arguments that are made are outside the factors that we need to look at in order to make our decision.
But we can listen to the public comments of 700 residents saying that they're opposed to this, correct?
You can listen, you can't,
Yeah.
you can listen to them and take the testimony of the ZBA, we just can't take any new testimony, rely on it. It's gotta be at the ZBA.
So I'm still confused. Any testimony we had today, we can't take.
Well,
Go ahead.
Correct.
well, to be clear, the testimony and evidence has to be vetted at the public hearing. The county board rules do allow for public comment. Any public comment that is outside of what was submitted at the public hearing should not be considered. I can tell you that the public comments today were consistent with what was vetted at the public hearing. So the comments today and the testimony that we hear at public at hearing are the same, essentially.
So we take that into consideration with
You certainly
vote.
can, yes.
Thank you.
Thanks, Member Keels.
One quick
Yeah.
question, Paul. The piece that's along Roosevelt Road, could that be designated commercial and then the rest of the 4 acres, leave it, not change zoning? I mean, can you break up the parcel into a portion to be rezoned and then maybe the portion that is touching the neighbors on the other side, leave that residential? So kind of something like that?
In theory, you can, but we have to react to the petition before us. And the petition before us is the full 5-acre tract of land. That was something that the Zoning Board of Appeals did consider in their their denial. Technically, you only need 25,000 square feet of land to develop in a B2 zoning district. But once again, we can only react to what's put before us, and the entire 5 acres was put before us.
So our hands up. Member Champlin.
Thank you. And just for clarification, for Member Guston, I think, and I'm not sure, Member Krajewski, I think what you're saying is that during public comment and even maybe some of the zoning board's decisions, that they made their decision based on what they believed the use of the property was going to be, not taking that in consideration instead of just taking into consideration changing it from a residential to a business. Is that correct, Member Krajewski? That's what you're saying?
Microphone, Brian.
The evidence that I read, I come to the conclusion that they met the LaSalle factors and that they should be given the B2 based on the evidence that I saw there and read, and I just come to a different conclusion as the ZBA.
Okay, all right, thank you.
And I think also to be clear, Paul, correct me if I'm wrong, while any public comment is not evidence, it's not new testimony, it certainly can be factored into a decision of the development committee.
Yes.
So that hopefully answers your question, yes.
To clarify, my understanding is that we are to stick with the finding of facts. But again, as Mr. Krajewski just noted, you can, we as a member can decide whether we agree or not. And that's where you come down to, was the LaSalle factor met, et cetera. So, but we, for new members, we need to look at the findings of fact that came from the zoning board. And while they may have included the public participation, et cetera, and that may have colored what they decided were the facts or what they discussed. We need to stick with what the ZBA has presented to us. So we are agreeing or not agreeing with what they said.
In terms of the evidence, yes.
Evidence,
But-
right.
But you can come to a different conclusion.
As Mr. Krajewski has.
Yeah.
So, okay, thank you. I just wanted to clarify that.
And I mean, when it's general trend of the area, it's what, I mean, that's, I guess, what is general? Is it just on Roosevelt Road, or is it, you know, everything that's within X distance of it? I mean, it's just how far you look. And they seem to look farther than I look, I think. It's why we came.
Member Guston.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, finding of facts, totally understand it. However, we do have B1 and B2. We have uses that are considered under those zoning modifications. So use actually should be taken into consideration because it is part of the definition of the zoning categories. So, and thank you, Chair. I wanted to make sure I could actually consider what the residents were saying and others. Thank you.
Anyone else? Member Rutledge.
I promise. Thank you,
No,
Chair.
you can-
Just totally a speculative question, but would there be as much resistance to the zoning change if Mr. Sheehan was proposing a liquor store on that property?
It's speculative.
Yeah, I know it.
We're looking at the LaSalle factors rather relative to the land.
Anyone else? Going once, going twice. Okay. All right, we have a motion and a second to approve the Cary Farms rezoning from R2 to B2. The ZBA voted to deny. We have an objection from West Chicago. Again, whatever decision is made here would require a supermajority at county board. So this is a motion to approve. Roll call, please.
Member Chaplin. Aye. Member Ozog. Member Krajewski. Member Guston. Member Rutledge.
Aye.
Chair Tornatori.
No, and the motion carries. Will be brought to county board next week for a vote. Any old business? Any new business? Thank you all. Without objection, we're adjourned. Thank you.